Nobody's given me an answer yet, because the sensation is we're not thinking at all. It's because we're so engaged in the activity. We have a plan for each shot. We're following through. We're acknowledging when we get nervous and know it's okay. There's a lot that goes into it.
The player that has trouble getting off to good starts, that always seems to get behind the 8 ball early. What causes that? What happens to that student? And how do we help that person?
Tony Ruggiero here. If you like what you're listening to on the Tour Coach podcast, if you like me and the guests that I bring in and we sit around trying to help you with your game of golf, please do me a favor. Make sure you like and subscribe. And most importantly, would you please drop me a comment below about how I can help you with your golf game? That's why I'm here, to make you play better golf.
All right. Another Tour Coach coming at you here, joined by my good friend. Actually, before we jump into it, the Tour Coach, as always, is presented by our friends at Staycay. It's not always too early in the day for a Staycay, but it is today because I've been traveling and I'm back. And anyways, the opportunity to sit down. We were going to do this last week. We were together working, and just between dinner and chicken wings and stuff, it ran too late. But been wanting to sit down with you, Doc, here on the Tour Coach, Dr. Greg Cartin, mental coach, performance coach on the PGA Tour and in hockey, in the world of hockey as well, and helps and is a teammate with me over the years with so many players, and obviously continues to this day. And Doc, I thought a great thing to talk about. I'm going to tell the story for a second though. There was a young guy, you've talked to him before for me. He's plays at an SEC school, struggling with his golf swing, and he's done awesome work on his golf swing, right? Over probably 8 months, 6 to 8 months. And I got off the phone with him today as I was driving into town, and he was, he's gotten in that mode where he's always sending videos, and it's like, I need it to be more like this, or it needs to be a little more like that. And I said, like, he's done so much great work on his golf swing, and his golf swing's plenty good now. But then when I broke it down and I said, do you do any type of practice that is geared towards improving your performance on the golf course rather than only looking at technical stuff? And he kind of paused for a minute, Doc, and he was like, no, no, I really don't. Right.
Wow.
And I wanted to talk with you about that, because I think so many players of all levels, but I see it in a lot of juniors. I see it in a lot of college players, and I see it in a lot of young pros. And I know it affects mid-ams, everybody else too, but they get so focused on the stuff they're working on the golf swing. And I love that as a coach, but they forget the fact that, like, working on your golf swing is different than what you do to perform better on the golf course. They're actually different things.
They're two different things.
How do we help those people?
Yeah, you just got into it a little bit. Like, they are two different things. There's two components to being a good golfer, and one is developing physical skill, and the other is playing golf, and they're almost two separate things. It's tough, and I think a lot of mostly younger kids who are really gifted physically and they develop that skill at an early age miss that step of learning how to play. They can get away with physical talent only to a certain point. And then they start showing up to events where the fields are a little bit better, the courses are a little bit more challenging, and they start to feel a little bit nervous, right? That's the big difference. It feels different when you show up to an event than it does when you're practicing or even playing casual rounds. And then what happens is, because they start to feel different, they start to swing a little bit different. And then it starts the vicious cycle of, well, now I'm not hitting it great. Well, you're not hitting it great because you weren't feeling good and you were getting in your own way.
Right.
And it just goes and goes and goes. So, the easy answer is you've got to practice under a little bit of, or with a little bit of discomfort, right? You've got to structure your practice to where you're not just hitting balls. There has to be some discomfort. There has to be some penalty, or you have to add something that'll help you practice a little bit more in the way that it feels like to compete. I don't think you can't recreate what it feels like to step on the first tee in a tournament, but you can work your way towards it. And so I think that's a good rule of thumb is um, if you're adding a little bit of discomfort to your practice, you're doing all right. You're getting closer.
How I love the add discomfort part, right?
Mhm.
Like, and one of the things I explained to this young man was like, you know, it's I feel like he's done great on the golf swing. Now he has to like focus more on execution, like executing a golf shot. And
Mhm.
I talked to him about like he said, well, what part of practice I spent 15 minutes doing this, 50 minutes doing that. I like to give them specific ball counts to where they're engaged in each shot, trying to hit a shot.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a
Like
great way to do it.
instead of that idea of like I'm going to go hit balls. So for 30 minutes I'm going to work on this. Like I feel like when and I'd love your and if I'm off base or wrong, tell me. But like to me, when you say I'm just going to do this for 30 minutes, it's easy for your mind to wander, not be as engaged or focused. But if you said I'm going to go hit 20 shots and each one of the 20 I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
execute, he said, I feel like you would be more engaged and more committed to trying to do it. And like that to me, and then if you said, and I've got to try to hit whatever, 60% of them or 70% of them within whatever range, that would create some comfort, but it would also make you focused on what you're doing. I just feel like some of these folks on the range are going through it, but they're really not engaged and they're really not focused. And then when they get on the tee and they don't necessarily know how to do it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think that's as good as you can do, right? And engagement and intention.
Right.
So having a plan for each shot, right? And we see it all the time, when I sit in on some of your lessons and, kids grooving it and they're hitting
Uh,
it nice. And then we'll say, "No, hold on a second, move that ball like 6 inches to the left and aim on a different spot." Or step off the force plate and now hit to it, right? Like in the middle of a lesson, and you see how difficult it becomes for them, right? They just hit 20 great shots in a row, and now you move it just a little bit. That's a little bit of discomfort, and so that, in addition to having a plan for each shot, are really good ways that you can start to implement some of the work that you're doing in your lessons or in your practice, because that's what competing is.
right.
There's no substitute for playing, I don't think, right? Where you're going through the cadence and everything. But even when you're playing in casual rounds, can you spend a couple seconds behind each shot and make a plan for each shot, right?
I love that. What now, as far as, uh, you know, I like the idea. I've heard you with some students. We've talked with this other player about, talking through what you're trying to do each shot.
Hmm.
Right. And I think that's a great, like that goes along. You mean doing it on the range or on the practice area when you're trying to execute these shots, like where am I trying to start it? Where do I want to finish it
Right.
or whatever? Because like to me, you need to practice like that to be able to go do it on the golf course. Just trying to start doing that on the golf course
Yeah.
in a tournament isn't as effective as if like, you know, learning that process and practicing that way where you talk through the golf shot, what are you
Hmm.
trying to do? I also think that helps facilitate your decision making on the golf course in
Yeah.
tournament play as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a drill we do with kids a lot, or all golfers really, where they actually verbalize it out loud, right? And they sort of walk themselves through the shot they're going to hit, and then they step in and they hit it. And there's very little technical thought,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it's a great way to start to mix the two together. And don't be afraid to talk out loud while you're doing it. It makes a big difference. It brings a lot more awareness to what you're doing. There's a lot more intention behind each shot. And to the point where right now, when you're competing, can you almost go through the same exercise to where now you're isolating each shot. You're not counting up how many you're hitting. You're not counting your score. You're just focused on that one shot in that moment, and it's a really good exercise for golfers to do.
Yeah, because that's what I think, you talked about like awareness of each shot and with intent. And I feel like so many golfers on the range groove it, but they're hitting balls. There's not a lot of intent with each thing, with each shot, and and they're going through it. And then they go to the golf course and then they want to execute a shot, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and it's hard to transition from being one way to the next.
It really is. Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, it's just the way we everyone's grown up practicing. You
Right.
never hit the same shot twice on a golf course in a row, but that's how we practice.
Mhm.
So, and look, you do have to develop physical
Right.
skill.
That's part of the skill acquisition.
It is. But again, they're two different things. Playing golf and developing skill are two different things.
And I think that where golfers get lost is they work for a long time on the skill acquisition, especially when like a college player or a junior player, somebody comes to you the first time and, well, here's the things you've got to change to get better. And this is causing it. And there's obviously a period of time you've got to go stay on that skill acquisition. But it's knowing when you've got to start shifting from skill acquisition to how do you perform better.
Correct.
And I think that's where, I think as coaches, sometimes I've got to do a better job at that. Sometimes saying, hey, like I tell this kid, your golf swing's 10 times better than the scores you're getting out of it. Right. Like that's
usually the case.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think, when you're in the Bay and, you start to groove a little bit of work. And by the way, here's another point. How often will a golfer struggle with one component of their game, like they didn't drive it well, or they didn't putt well, and then right after the round they'll go right to the range again and hit 100 drives. They got to figure it out, right? But they're not taking into consideration why maybe it was wrong. Yeah, there might have been a little bit of a technical flaw, but was that technical flaw coming from you getting in your own way? Right. And now you're going back to a different practice environment than competition. And again, the cycle just continues. So I think it's always good to have some sort of in your work, you've got to add some discomfort to it.
And, the other thing I said to this young man as well is, golfers very easily get caught up in like, I've got to hit it better to score better, right?
Right.
And when you're in that, and then when you go from skill acquisition to trying to perform better, like there's lots of other skill sets required to play really good golf.
Yes.
And the golf swing and the ball striking is important, but it's only a portion of the whole equation. You've got to putt good, you got to chip better, you got to pitch, you got wedge, all that stuff. And I think that's everybody focuses on just one thing, but it's a bigger picture issue.
It is. And I think most people would be surprised if they asked themselves and really thought about the question of, when go back and think about some rounds you played really well. How great did you really hit it? Did you hit 18 greens and putt it perfectly, or did you scrape it around and battle and overcome some adversity? And there's so many other factors that go into playing good golf other than just hitting it really well.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly makes it easier, right? But
right.
But you have to have both.
What another type of student I want to talk about, the player that has trouble getting off to good starts.
Mm-hmm.
It always seems to get behind the 8 ball early. And then once they get to X number of over or whatever, they relax and I want to say relax. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
They give up.
But they get off and they're 5 over through 6. And then they play the rest of the way. Then they play the rest of the way.
Yeah.
2 under, 3 under, and you can change that start to whatever skill level you are, obviously. But what causes that? What happens to that student, and how do we help that person?
I think there's 2 reasons. One, the first more tangible one is take a look at how you're warming up prior to your round. Right?
Okay.
Are you getting ready to play? Are you warming up? What are you taking a lesson? Are you like having a practice session? What are you doing? I don't think enough people who do struggle to get off to good starts are warming up the right way, right? Are you hitting shots on the range? Are you playing holes on the range? Or, certainly you got to warm your body up for sure.
Yeah.
But too often, people hit bad shots in the range, and then all of a sudden they're in a 30-minute sort of range session, and they're not getting ready to play. That's one, right? Take a look at how you're warming up. The other is, I think the second we step on the first tee, everyone's under the assumption that I have to start well, and that plants the seed. I got to hit this tee shot perfectly, right? Instead of, this may be extreme, but wouldn't it be a nice goal to, hey, why don't I just get this one in play and sort of work my way into the round?
Right.
It takes the pressure off a little bit, right? And I think those are two things you can look at. One, how you're warming up, but two, can you work your way into the round? And sure, golf's hard, but I think we make it harder on ourselves by feeling like we got to get off to a good start. I'm a guy that starts slow, so I got to birdie this hole today. I got to start off with a birdie, which means I got to rip one down the middle, and that adds a lot of stress and tension to that first tee shot. How about let's just get this one in play?
Right.
Right.
And I think also too, like we always talk with players about, you want to make aggressive, confident swings, but to conservative targets, right? And understand the situation. Well, if you're a person that starts off slow, like I think that attitude, oh, I got a birdie, I'm going to get off to a birdie this hole, but like just, make, adjust your strategy to be, make an aggressive swing to a little more conservative target where you don't.
Yeah, and that may mean choosing a different club. Maybe you you club down a little bit, so it gives you the most confidence, right? Like what's going to give you the most freedom on that first tee? If you're a guy that steps up to the first tee and really struggles with nerves and anxiety and all that, would a 3-wood or even an iron give you a little bit more freedom in that moment?
Yeah.
Right. And now you've worked your way through that, and it's just a little bit easier way to start. And by the way, I would guess that in my work, at least the experience, 90% of golfers tend to struggle out of the gate, right? Versus they start well and they don't finish well.
Tony Ruggiero here, and I'm drinking one of my favorite things, a Paloma by Staycay. But look, not only can it make you feel great and enjoy your day, it can help you with your golf game. Let me show you how. Do you struggle with a reverse pivot? Do you get too much this way? Well, grab your Paloma, put it between your hands just like this, and pretend you were going to turn and hand it to a buddy. I know you probably wouldn't give away your Paloma Staycay, but if you're looking to fix your pivot, turn and hand your Paloma to your buddy. Do that. Follow me to DewSweeper TV, and let's get better at the game of golf.
That's what my next question was going to be, to flip it, because as players get towards, as they're moving up that ladder to become more competitive, but you also see it, I still spend lots of time teaching a lot of recreational golfers that are really trying to get better. And a lot of them come to the retreats that you and I do with Colby and Morgan and the gang. And they get where off to a good start, I got a chance to break 80 for the first time.
Yeah, right.
Or the high school player or the junior or the college player or the young pro that gets 3-4 under for the first time, and they'll even say to you, I was just trying to get it into the house, right?
Right.
And they end up finishing bogey, double bogey, right? I even think about tour players I've had. I remember early in Smiley Kaufman's career when he was on the Korn Ferry Tour, first couple Korn Ferry starts, had trouble making a couple bogeys or doubles coming in. How do we help the folks that get where they're going to break a barrier or they're get under par, be able to keep going and finish?
Sure. I think your objective doesn't change regardless of where you stand in the round, right? Okay. Meaning, as golfers, our objective remains constant. It's to make a free, from a mental perspective, it's to make a free swing, a swing where you're not getting in your own way. That'll never change. What does change is the stories you tell yourself, where you stand, how many over are you? How many under are you? Where do you stand in relation to the cut? Am I going to shoot my career low round? All these stories start to, and it's normal to think that way. I think this is the most important piece. But if you start to engage with the stories and not with the objective, you're going to create a lot of problems for yourself. So it looks like this. You're about to break, your own personal best. You acknowledge the fact that you just thought about it, which is normal, and then keep returning to that objective. That's great, but I just need to make a good swing here. It's a simple little mantra. Let's make a good swing here, right? And to continue to connect and engage with your objective and not the stories is as good as you can do in those situations. It's impossible not to know where you stand, right? It's impossible to not think about that stuff. You're going
Right.
to think about it. It's completely normal, but it doesn't have to affect how you play, assuming you're able to reconnect after you acknowledge the fact that you thought about that with what you're trying to do. And that's simply to make a good swing. And that's how you really simplify golf, right? And by the way, talk about simplifying. This is really easy to understand, but very, very difficult.
Very difficult to do.
And it's why it's good to practice with a little bit of uncertainty and discomfort as much as you can, because that will get you ready for, what competitive golf feels like.
I think too, a saying that we've used a long time, my old mentor used to say is, your objective is to go out there to drive whatever it is you're trying to do, whatever shot it is you try to hit. Like I want to hit draws, I want to hit fades, or if there's one specific thing you're trying to do in your golf swing that makes you hit good shots, you're trying to go out there and execute that the best you can every swing, regardless of what happened to the last shot.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Right. And
Yeah.
like, if you have that mindset, or you like whatever it is, I'm going to try to make a free swing, I'm going to try to hit a hook, whatever. And you go out there and you try to do it every shot, regardless of where the last one went. Like that tends to help you out.
It does. And that keeps you from trying to fix things mid-round, which never seems to go very well. Everyone's under the assumption that, you make a bogey, you make a couple bad swings, that the next one's going to be even harder, right? It's only harder because you're thinking about what's happened prior and trying to avoid doing that again versus swing the golf club.
Right.
Right. And again, it's really important to mention it's normal to think about all that stuff. It's normal to stand over a shot after you've just made 6 doubles in a row and not feel confident, but it doesn't mean you can't make a good swing, right? The second you start to fight yourself in terms of what you're thinking and try to change that, you're making it much harder for yourself. You can hit good shots and be uncomfortable.
One thing I like things that I hear you talk to players with, and is the fact that you don't have to hit it great. You don't have to feel good. You don't to play good golf, right? And I think there's this, especially with social media, everybody sees all the great shots. Everybody thinks everybody is striping it and hitting it perfect every day.
Right.
And yet I know from all of my years out on tour how many guys have won or played great tournaments not hitting it great.
Yeah, right.
And oftentimes, was talking with one of my Corn Ferry players yesterday, or day before, like about how Austin hit, mentioned to me about like one of his best tournaments. He hit it terrible the week before at a bachelor party, hit it terrible Monday, Tuesday, and then going into Sunday, he was in contention with a chance to win. Right. Yeah. And like talking about that, it's an uncanny how many times you hear that from professional players. Why is that the case? And what can recreational golfers or up and coming golfers learn from that?
Yeah, I think the golfers that play well or score well when they're not hitting it great, right, are the ones that they're just not getting in their own way. They're continuing to play golf. Right. And I think expectations play a little bit of part of it. Like that's the greatest piece of this is everyone assumes you have to have high expectation or you don't want to have high expectations, but it's hard to avoid that if you've played well going into a tournament.
Right.
Right. Yet people think, well, you have to have all this confidence to play well. And how many guys fall into the category you just described where, you've been playing awful and then all of a sudden you show up to the tournament with no expectations and everything goes great. It's all in there. It's always
the
all in.
same. You see it all the time with guys that are hurt or sick.
Yeah.
They
or the weather's bad or
right.
whatever. It just takes your focus away from what you're thinking.
Right.
You're focused somewhere else.
So if how do you work on, or is there a way to practice changing that thought process, like to where you create more freedom, but you don't, that you don't go in there with the idea that it's got to be perfect. I mean, because the one thing I tell young players is like you don't just decide you're not going to do that and it's easy and you could quit doing it.
No, right.
Yeah. How do you get better at that?
Yeah, that's the tricky part. Experience, right? Learning from when things go wrong, why did they go wrong? Asking yourself the question always, what would I have done differently? Right? There's no way to practice this type of approach on the range, right? It comes from tournament experience, it comes from playing experience, from learning, from knowing that everyone's under the assumption that there's a correct way to think. When I ask golfers when they play their best what they're thinking about, nobody's given me an answer yet because the sensation is we're not thinking at all. It's because we're so engaged in the activity. We have a plan for each shot. We're following through. We're acknowledging when we get nervous and know it's okay. There's a lot that goes into it.
Right.
But I think the most important thing for golfers to know is that you can be uncomfortable and make good golf swings. You can be nervous and make good golf swings. You can be frustrated and make good golf swings. The second you start to think it should be different, you're going to create a problem for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I think you go back to where we started. I think the more you can introduce being uncomfortable in your practice, however you do it. I also think practicing with somebody where I know I've done a lot of this with short game, but you can do, but like where you compete in practice with somebody.
Sure. That's always great.
Is awesome. Right.
Yeah, it's great.
And avoiding hitting the same shot over and over. I always go back to that time we were at Doral doing a junior camp. And there was a kid over there who must have hit the same chip with 3 baskets of balls.
He had a whole, he did.
4 out. I mean, if he gets that one shot, he's probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
But I just remember, I'll never forget. I remember how animated you were, like going through the day watching this guy.
He was out there all day.
Right.
It was 100 degrees out. He was hitting the same shot over and over again.
But, I think, again, it's like, I also think, too, that the players I've been around, especially when they've played really well, like, the more they felt like they were prepared, like they practiced in a way they were trying to perform. They did like those type of things, whether they were chipping contest, whatever. The more they felt like they were prepared, the better they play, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And they also were more accepting if they didn't play well because they're more like, I practiced it.
I just didn't play well.
I just didn't.
So that's a really good point there too. You made it's not so much that it's more the understanding that that's preferred to be that way going into a tournament, but there's never a guarantee. So they're not in such a panic if things go wrong. So they can right the ship much easier.
Now the last question I want to get to is when things start swirling on the golf course, when panic does set in. You're going along, playing good golf. And, I always say it's a slow game. People say it takes 4.5 hours to play. But when you're the guy hitting it and you're in a tournament It's amazing how fast things happen out there.
Sure. Yeah, things go really quick. You want to get it over with.
Exactly. And I see that. I see folks that when it starts to not being good or they get under pressure, you can tell it's like they're trying to get the shot over with rather than execute a shot.
Right.
How do we get people to slow it down or to make better decisions or to not let stuff swirl and get out of
Yeah, I mean that's a big one for sure. But first, you have to be aware. You have to know that things are speeding up. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. So it's the awareness first, and then it's really there's a tendency when things are going bad that you feel like you need to get things back. I got to make a birdie here, right? So it goes back to that same thing when how you start better. You really need to simplify in those moments, right? Let's just make one good swing here. Maybe I'll club down and make a nice easy swing and see what happens. It's a hard thing to do. And because we're human, sometimes you're going to lose that battle and you're going to have a bad day. But can you learn from it too, right?
Yeah.
Can you keep working towards that? When you find yourself in those positions, can you make it a goal that if I find myself in one of those situations, I'm going to be aware and I'm going to slow myself down. I'm going to make a really conservative decision on what club I choose and hit a shot that I'm okay with. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to make 4 birdies in a row because I started slow. So it's not easy.
I think too that along with the skill acquisition and the practice where we've talked about making yourself uncomfortable, part of the process is after a tournament or after playing, being able to kind of debrief and go, okay, hey, maybe I still shot X, or maybe I didn't win and I would have liked to place higher, but I got better each day.
Yeah, for sure.
Or I got better each 9. Or, you know what, I played X number of holes and I didn't make a double or worse. Right? Like, I think that if you look at your progress, not only in what the score is, but you start trying to learn from how you're doing, where you're like, hey, like I have made progress.
Sure.
Right. That helps you continue to develop and continue to stay on your path.
There's a lot that you can take away from bad rounds. And I always like my people to ask themselves that question. What would they have done differently in situations that didn't go well? Most of the time, there isn't much they would do differently. And now you start to understand how difficult golf can be sometimes.
Oh, that's a great point there.
Right? So it's a really good question to ask yourself. And when you find situations that didn't go well after a round, would you have done anything differently? And I don't mean, would have hit a better shot, but
right. Would I made a better decision? Would I have played
a better decision?
Shot?
That's right. Or I just let my thoughts run and I couldn't overcome it. Or there's things that you can really dig out of that I think are really important.
And I like what you just said about how most people there isn't a ton they would change. Like, okay, now I laid up and then I still made that. Well, you know what? Like, golf's hard, right?
Yeah, right.
Right.
And by the way, you come to that conclusion,
always work.
It makes it easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, I did most of the right things. But, if you go through the rounds like that, and you start seeing like, okay, maybe I did learn. You know what? When I'm in that situation, I probably should have played and just tried to hit the front part of the green instead of trying to get it all back and up and down from 200 or whatever. I think you learn from those things, but then you also learn golf is hard.
It's right. One of my closest buddies who play with a lot, he's a 15 or 16 handicap, and every time he hits a bad shot, you just hear him mutter, "Man, golf is hard." He's right. And what he's saying is, did everything I could. Golf's hard.
Right. And I think too that in the players that we're talking about, you have to understand that sometimes you can do everything right, make a great swing, and hit a shitty golf shot.
Yeah, for sure.
It turned out shitty, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes you can make a shitty swing, not do a lot right, and it turns out great.
Just fine. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's can be frustrating, but just because you've done all the steps and you go through and you execute, you try to do everything right, doesn't guarantee you're going to hit a good shot.
No, and this is why golf is so strange. A golfer would much rather do everything right with a bad result than do a bunch of things wrong and get lucky and have it go the right way. And that's why golf, to me, one of the reasons is so bizarre.
Yeah.
So it's a good example that there's only so many things we can control. And if you focus on those, you're going to feel pretty good after the round, regardless.
Well, I think when you talk about the skill acquisition, I think that one thing, with all of the info out there, if you do a good job controlling the things you can control, you do a little maintenance on your aim, your ball position, the couple things you're working on in your golf swing, you work on those or you maintain those, but then the rest of your practice is working towards performance and transferring it to the golf course and those things, the things like you talked about. It doesn't mean you don't still monitor the things you can't control. I think folks have to understand that to get better, you kind of still have to do both, really.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right.
Doc, this was awesome. I think this turned out good today.
This was great. It's always great.
Always good when we get to hang out, and want to remind everybody out there, we've got our VIP Elite Player Development Camp coming up June 11th to 13th. Doc will be there, Kevin Kirk, myself, Wayne Flynn. Great group. If you're a junior player, high school player, developing college player, young professional, it's a heck of a damn good time, and it's great and we're gonna have some special tour players. May have one bigger name coming. I'm waiting on a confirmation, but it's a great time, but it's a great experience for really learning how to perform better and to become a better competitive player.
I'm looking forward to it.
And once again, you'll hang around and do nothing but look fantastic doing it.
That's right. That's right. It's like you said, people pay me to help them do nothing.
Yeah, I know. But you're the best at it. You're the best at it. Doc, thanks for sitting in. Real quick, though, let everybody know where to find you on social media. We're going to post a bunch of these video clips here as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm it's at GC3Greg on Instagram. And I'm on Twitter too, but don't use it much. So
I know. I tweeted you the other day, and it took forever to get a reach.
Yeah, I got to get better at that. It's been 15 or so years. I still haven't gotten it going yet. But
it's time. It's time, Doc. It's time. Right. At GC3Greg, at the DewSweeper here. Thanks to Stay K for sponsoring the show as always. Doc, appreciate all the help and support for me as well as for all the players. And we're going to have a fun summer doing some good stuff together down in South Florida as well.
Looking forward to it, T. Thanks a lot.
All right, Dr. Greg Cartin, Tony Ruggiero, Tour Coach. We'll be back next week with more help for all of your golf games.